Hello everyone, welcome to Dermoscopea. My name's Amy and I'm a medical doctor in training working in the UK. I've made this presentation because increasingly we are seeing dermatology services include teledermatology advice and guidance pathways to get rapid advice from a specialist, and so you may also want to consider adding the ability to take dermoscopic photographs alongside your teledermatology service. It's also useful to know how to maximise and improve your dermoscopic photographs so that you can interpret them more effectively. This presentation will focus on taking dermoscopic photographs, but of course it is essential to also take a macroscopic photograph, particularly if you're sending it for advice and guidance, because being able to correlate between both the macroscopic and the dermoscopic images is very important. I will first of all give a brief outline of the devices you can use to take dermoscopic photographs, followed by some practical tips to help you take good quality dermoscopic photographs. The focus will be on the practical side of dermoscopy rather than interpreting these images, which can be found in a different section of the Dermoscopea website. So starting with the different types of device that we can use, I'll go through 3 different ways of getting these photographs. So firstly, the most expensive option. There are dedicated adapters for SLR or mirrorless cameras available if you have one of these in your department. The main advantage of these is that you can get excellent quality photographs, but they're only really necessary if you're thinking about collecting images for teaching or academic purposes, as they can be very expensive and quite slow to use in a busy clinic, which makes them less practical for using regularly day to day. But as you can see, the dermatoscope directly attaches to the lens of the camera via an adapter. The adapter will vary depending on the dermatoscope you have, but they all work in this way by attaching directly onto the lens. When you take these photographs with an SLR or mirrorless camera, it's important to turn the P setting on. This ensures sufficient automatic functioning to get a good image, and it also means the flash doesn't automatically turn on, as it might do in a fully automatic mode. You also need to set the dermatoscope to the correct camera setting when using a DSLR. The dermatoscope usually either has a marker for where to set the focus for photography, or a spacer ring that clips on to fix it in place. The image on the left shows a Heen Delta 20T with a camera line. You line the focus ring up with that line before attaching it to the DSLR adapter. The image on the right shows the Optical D-scope with a plastic spacer ring snapped in place shown by the black arrow. You fit this ring, then tighten the focus ring down onto it before attaching it to an adapter. Secondly, there are smartphone adapters which again are specific to the type of dermatoscope which you have access to. These are usually reasonably affordable and allow adequate photographs to be taken for day-to-day use. They are also more practical for a busy clinic than an SLR. If you're considering buying a dermatoscope, you may be able to negotiate inclusion of these accessories when shopping for one, so it's definitely worth asking a company if they will throw one in when shopping around. In the example shown here of a Dermlight adapter, your phone would slot into the black clamp, which you'd then tighten, and you would then line up the metal circle with your phone's back camera, not the selfie camera, and then the dermatoscope would attach on top. Again, there are different variations of these depending what dermatoscope you have, but the principles will be very similar. Finally, a budget option for taking dermoscopic photographs is a magnifying loupe, such as this device on the left-hand side, used for measuring thread counts when inspecting linen. This was presented some years ago as a tool for resource-poor settings, but has received some popularity amongst non-specialists for an easy and budget-friendly introduction into dermoscopy. It has illumination and magnification, so when used with fluids such as alcohol gel for immersion, this can be good enough to see some signs that can help with diagnoses and particularly with confirming benign lesions. Anyone familiar with wildlife photography may be aware of the Digiscope adapter in the bottom of the right-hand picture. These are inexpensive tools that connect either a compact camera or a smartphone to a telescope, and these can be used to attach your smartphone to a loupe easily and cheaply. They may work on some, but by no means all dermatoscopes. If you want to read more about this device, I'd like to direct you to the Loupe Dermoscopy section of the Dermoscopea website. I'll now move on to talking about how you can take good quality images once you've got your device set up. First of all, it's important to prepare the skin, making sure you remove any makeup or fake tan, and any excess crust, loose scabs or debris there might be overlying the lesion if you can. You can tease off a loose scab or crust with some wet cotton wool or gauze, or just by gently picking it off with your fingers. If you don't need to remove anything, make sure you give the lesion a clean with an alcohol wipe before applying the dermatoscope. Just like preparing the skin, you also need to prepare the device ahead of taking a photograph. It may sound obvious, but make sure you have charged the device up. Some dermatoscopes have a few different settings for the LED light, so make sure you choose the brightest light option. Because you have this bright LED light, you can turn off your phone's flash, as this will interfere with the image quality. And as I've already discussed with an SLR or mirrorless camera, you should set this to the P setting. Make sure you give the lens of the dermatoscope a good clean with an alcohol wipe to remove any dust or debris. When it comes to attaching your phone to the dermatoscope, make sure you position the camera centrally in the viewfinder. Extending the end plate will ensure you remove any shadow in your image. And finally, using a contact fluid will almost always produce a higher quality image, so we definitely recommend this. When it comes to taking the photograph, it's important to place the dermatoscope so the lens is completely flat on the skin rather than at an angle. If it's at an angle, it will affect how the image is focused, so make sure your dermatoscope is at 90 degrees to the lesion. Try not to press too hard, as this can blanch blood vessels which might be important for making a diagnosis. You can try using a thicker, more viscous alcohol gel to help avoid this, or you can use the non-contact polarised mode, which completely avoids the problems associated with applying pressure to a lesion, although you do get a slightly lower quality image. Make sure you place the lesion at the centre of the image, so all of the borders of the lesion can be visualised with normal surrounding skin. If the lesion is particularly large, this might not be possible, so you might have to take multiple photographs, but it is important that each border is visualised. All dermatoscopes will have a measuring scale, so try and make sure this is within the image, as again it will help you to interpret the lesion and monitor change if you're taking photos over an extended period of time. To focus the lesion, tap the screen over where the lesion is, or if you are using an SLR camera, press the shutter button to focus the image before you take the picture. I would advise taking a few so that you can choose the best one, and if you are taking photographs over a period of time for monitoring purposes, make sure the orientation is consistent so any changes are more easily identified. So I hope this was a useful short summary of how you can maximise your dermoscopic photography skills. Thank you very much for listening, and see you again soon.